to the World Satsanga on the 14th of February 2015. So thank you very much for joining in the Satsanga this month. I know it's a difficult day today because it is Valentine's Day, so those who we love we should be taking out and cherishing. And I totally agree with that, so there's no problem with that at all. I'm just going to look at the agenda for today. Once we've got the system stabilised, I was going to go through how we integrate our true energetic selves, or how we integrate with our true energetic selves, should I say, when we disincarnate. And really sending a love to everybody, which is fantastic. And then we've got some questions. I've got some from Gwyn, and I've got some from, which actually mirror some of the questions that John asked me directly after the Satsanga last month, which are consistent with Gwyn's questions. And also after that, we got to 15-minute meditation on how to keep our bodies in a healed state. And actually, this is an interest. This meditation won't actually be a meditation as more as guidance, actually, but we will go through the meditation as if we are healing ourselves, and the guidance that I'll give you will allow you to do certain things to yourself from a spiritual and physical perspective. Okay, so let's just log on to this. First of all, how do we... Okay, so how do we integrate or reintegrate with our true energetic self when the physical demises? Well, actually, a lot of this information is within the book I'm writing now, which is called The End Dialogues. So I'm not promoting this, of course, ho ho ho. But essentially the detail is there. So I'm not going to go into major detail because there's too much detail there to go into. But essentially, when the physical body demises, the aspect, that part of the true energetic self, which is sometimes called the Godhead, or the Oversoul, or the Higher Self, that is projected into the physical, basically returns back to the energetic. But it doesn't go back into the true energetic self instantaneously. There have to be certain things that have to be sorted out. One of those is addictions to any chemical substances, for instance, any physical substances, or any thought processes. They have to be thought about and worked with. And the other is the understanding of what the aspect has done in its existence, the so-called life review, which is, to be honest, quite an in-depth piece of work. It's not specifically aligned to the individual soul itself or the individual aspect itself. It's aligned to the work that the team have done, and the team would be the incarnate individual, the incarnate individual aspect, and the guide and helpers that help that particular soul throughout its incarnation, giving the soul or the aspect a nudge here and a nudge there to go into the right direction, to meet the right individuals, to do the right things, to experience the right things, to make U-turns sometimes, to go into various different career paths, or to communicate with the right individuals at the right time. So all that happens, and not only at the level of, shall I say, the aspect of the soul itself, but how the guide and helpers worked. And it doesn't just include the linear aspect of what we perceive as being our existence. It also includes all of those event spaces that are created and destroyed as a result of dualistic, trialistic and quadralistic conditions, i.e. the ability to go down 2, 3 or 4 or more different paths in our existence. So it's quite an in-depth thing. That's not particularly the thing I'm trying to communicate today, because once all this is done, and once any addictions have been eradicated, removed, quarantined, and actioned, the soul can then start to think about recommuning. I'm going to call it communing because that's exactly what it is, with the true energetic self. That's larger energetic or sentient energetic construct that is what we truly are, our higher selves, our Godhead, if you want to call it that, or Oversoul. There's 4 different ways of doing this. I've been advised upon. 2 of them are major, and then there is a subset of one of those major ones. The first one is full communion. Now, full communion, I think I've described in a previous Satsanga to some extent. But basically, when an aspect has gone through the life review, it's gone through any addictions, it's been able to understand where it is rather than be, shall we say, convinced it's still a singular human being soul and is a human being and is still assigned to our Earth and is therefore thinking in earthly terms and therefore creates a construct around itself that looks like Earth, feels like Earth and tastes like Earth, and all those other aspects or souls that it meets, it creates a vehicle around them that looks like a human being. And this, by the way, doesn't specifically relate to the human beings. This is what other incarnate aspects do as well in other vehicles that are used throughout the physical universe. They all do the same thing. We all get confused, and unless we are totally aware or cognizant of what we are, we tend to create an environment around ourselves, including creating a new set of clothes for those aspects or souls we see that is consistent with the environment that we've previously been incarnate in. So once we've gone all through that and we actually realise that we're energetic beings, and all the previous work that we've done is a temporary condition that we've used to increase our ability to experience, learn, and evolve, then we start to work on the aspect of, when can we recommune with our higher self, or our true energetic self, Godhead or Oversoul. Also, continue just in this instance to call it the true energetic self, because that's what I've been told to call it. So there's these 2 main ways of doing this, and the second way is actually 3 ways in actual fact. The first way is full communion. Now, when a soul or an aspect goes into full communion with the true energetic self, it essentially removes or dissolves anything that is it and becomes the true energetic self. It's a little bit like a droplet of water, or should I say a raindrop falling into the sea on Earth, and possibly all the different water-based worlds in the whole of the physical universe. It's probably a better way of thinking of it, because that water, that droplet of water, represents the aspect, and that aspect becomes totally connected in all ways, shapes, and form with the energies that are the true energetic self. So if we think of the aspect in terms of being the water droplets dropping in the ocean, or the ocean of oceans, so to speak, it totally dissolves and becomes the ocean. It doesn't become a droplet of water in the ocean, it becomes the ocean. It's a component part of the ocean, right down to the molecular level and below. So right down to the atomic level, to the quark level, and below that several levels to the anu level, and the anu is the basic building block of the physical universe. And so it dissolves its personality, it dissolves its understanding, it dissolves its knowledge, it dissolves its evolutionary content, which becomes part of the true energetic self in totality. Now, before I move on to the rest of the ways of communing with the true energetic self, I'm going to say this: because that aspect has, shall we say, had an existence or a number of existences in an individualized state, it generates a personality, or more importantly, a signature that's associated with the evolutionary content and the experiential learning and knowing that's been accrued as a result of being individualized. And so no matter how small the component parts of that particular aspect is when it goes into full communion, those parts can be should the true energetic self desire be reconstructed into another aspect itself. And so even in full dissolution or full communion, if the true energetic self desires for that particular aspect to become individualized again in all of its individualized sense, it will create that opportunity. Pull all those microscopic component parts of itself back, all those small pieces of energy that have got a little bit of sentience attached to them that have the same level of individualized experience that particular aspect has achieved, back into one particular entity itself, and so it becomes a true entity again. So that even at this most dissolved state, an aspect can become an aspect again at the requirement or the desire of the true energetic self. Now, when we come to the other forms of communion, there's one major description for it, and that is partial communion. So what I've just talked about is full communion, where the aspect becomes the true entity itself in its most basic building block condition. But in partial communion, the aspect remains individualized, even though it's in communion with that true entity itself. And in a number of different ways that happens. The first way is that the energies that are associated with that aspect and all the sentience associated with those energies is compartmentalized in total and brought within the energies of the true entity itself rather than being projected outside. And if you think about a spoonful of syrup being the true entity itself, and when you tip the spoonful of syrup to one side, a part of that syrup drops down like a droplet, and there's a very small line of syrup between the droplet of syrup and the spoonful of syrup. That's, in essence, a good description of how the true entity itself would project an aspect of itself into various different forms of physicality or other forms of individualization that would be necessary to experience different parts of the multiversal condition. And so that's what happens. But an aspect can be totally individualized within this spoonful of syrup, so to speak. So that droplet could be recalled in totality and remain as it is, as a droplet, but still within the spoon of syrup. So it's almost like a droplet within a larger droplet. Okay, and that's one function of partial communion. That particular aspect may be totally individualized, but still fully connected to the Trinity source in that condition. Now, there's about 3 other versions of this. The second version is when there's a larger components, shall I say, of the aspect that are redistributed around the full energies that are the true entity itself. And so those components are still connected to each other for a communicative capability, but they are also connected in a partial communion state to the true entity itself. And so what we have is an individualized unit or aspect of the true entity itself, but it is distributed in a component sense around those energies. And that allows that particular aspect to be, let's say, relatively connected from a communion perspective whilst still maintaining its individuality. There's another version of that with smaller components, much smaller components are distributed throughout the energies that are the true entity itself. And that means that it still maintains its individuality, but rather than having, say, 4 chunks of itself located at reasonable points throughout the energies of the true entity itself, there are, let's say, 24, 25, 36 or 100 of these different components. There's no rule on this except that this particular aspect enters into partial communion, i.e. it still maintains its individuality, whereas in full communion the individuality is lost, or should I say devolved within the energies of the true entity itself. Whereas with partial communion, the entity, no matter how devolved, still maintains its individuality. And the very last condition is almost consistent with full communion, where the very basic components, the smallest energetic components, or should I say sentient energetic components of that aspect are dissolved within the true entity itself. But overall, the individualization is still maintained. And so that particular entity is individualized but completely diffuse as an individual entity within the main body of true energetic self energies, sentient energies. Okay, so that's how, at a very high level, we, as an aspect or as a soul, can and do integrate with our true energetic self. And there's much more to this in terms of the detail behind this, clearly. But what it means is that in the first instance, with the fully communed aspect, the true energetic self would need to reconstruct that aspect if it desires to use that particular aspect for some form of individualized work, whether it's incarnation or other work. With the partial communion, the aspect has two options for being projected beyond the total true energetic self energies. The first one is if the true energetic self itself decides to choose that particular aspect to do an incarnation or other form of individualized work external to the main body of true energetic self energies. But the second is, in very rare circumstances, is if the aspect itself decides to experience a certain experience and can justify it to the true energetic self that is necessary in terms of the overall evolutionary content, the overall experiential learning and evolutionary content, not only of itself as an aspect, but of the true energetic self as the overall energetic body of sentient energies. And so the aspect in partial communion can find itself assigned, let's say, for instance, an incarnation or another role, and it can also, in rare circumstances, if it's highly evolved, choose to decide to incarnate once it's shared this level of decision based upon certain desires and intention and evolutionary opportunities, has shared it with the true entity itself, and there's been an agreement that it can go and become individualized again as a projected aspect or projected soul into the physical form. And so there's various different ways, of course, of which the aspect then becomes incarnate. But the most important thing to note is that once an aspect has been assigned, whether it's been in full communion and the true energetic self has reconstructed that particular aspect and then projected it out into individuality, or whether an aspect was in various states of components integration within the true energetic self energy, but main body of energies, or whether it's diffuse within that main body of energies, once they've been singularized or projected out or allowed to project themselves out from the main body of energies, the process of working on what is going to be experienced is the same. So once an aspect has gone external, has returned from whatever existence it's had, has communed, has existed as a communed, individualized or fully communalized series of sentient energies, and is then chosen or has chosen to be projected externally to that main body of true energetic self entities. Once it's done that, everything else is its own decision as to how it's going to shall we say, action those desires for a certain experience and how that particular experience is going to benefit the true energetic self by the actualization of those desires, i.e. by becoming incarnate and experiencing them, for instance. This is a little bit deep, and the explanation I'm giving is very is very high level. But does anybody have any questions on this at all? No, I'm not surprised. Oh, right, okay. So Ulla's just asked the question: are the energies organised by archetypes? Only in so much as in partial communion they're organised in terms of the sentience attached to them and the experience associated and the evolution associated with that sentience. So if you want to call the sentience and the evolution associated with that sentience as an archetype, the answer is yes. But they are not specifically organised, they are randomly distributed, because they don't if they are organised, then they become part of this compartmentalised, partial communion-based integration, or should I say communion. Marnie's just asked, is full communion akin to escaping the wheel of karma? Even partial communion is potentially escaping the wheel of karma. When, as an aspect, we have worked with the physical or higher frequency aspects of the physical universe to the point where we can enter into it in an incarnate state and not be attracted to or addicted to any function within that within the physical universe. That means materialistic, status-based, thought-based, or any other form of attractivity to the physical existence. Then we no longer need to incarnate here because we've mastered it, and then we have actually escaped the wheel of karma, and then we can seek to have full or partial communion with our true energetic self. Although sometimes this happens anyway, external to the need for that, because sometimes we seek communion in between this cycle of karma, by the way. So it's a good question, mine, thank you. John's just asked, I've heard and read that lower frequency beings just get sucked up back into source, but as we raise our frequencies, our signature aspects gain substance. Okay, that sounds familiar. Lower frequency beings, if I classify those as astral entities rather than aspects of a true energetic self that have been projected into an environment to experience, learn and evolve, then those beings, as astral beings or low frequency entities that are in effect energy that has through various stages, either luck or longevity, created or started to evolve its own intelligence. If they start to, let's say, abuse those individual entities who incarnate for evolutionary purposes by hanging on to them and taking their energy, which happens a lot, then if they are taking, if a healer, for instance, can see them, then that healer can remove them from that particular incarnate individual and send them back to source. So that, I think, hopefully answers that question, John. But in terms of low frequency incarnate individuals, if an incarnate aspect has accrued a significant amount of, shall I say, attractivity to lower frequencies by, for instance, being attracted to drugs or being attracted to certain levels of status or thought processes or states of beingness or ownership, they would go into what I'll call a quarantine first, where those addictions are eradicated from them or erased from them before they can recommune with their true energetic self. because the true energetic self will not accept back into itself an aspect that is, shall I say, overloaded with low frequency attractivity. Normal karma is tolerated because the end game of that is a significant leap in evolution. But specifically being attracted to low frequencies and becoming low frequency means that the aspect itself is quarantined and is cleansed and educated, by the way, so it can then recommune later. Of course, there are aspects that are hybrid aspects that are created from different components of different aspects to create a hybrid aspect that would allow, let's say, a projected aspect of a true energetic self into the physical to achieve a certain role, not attract karma and then come out again. And some of those, you could argue, have been some of the ascended masters, because they've come here and very, very quickly established a ground footing where they don't get attracted to any sort of karmic force. Okay. Quarantine sounds like purgatory. Yes. It's not so much purgatory as more of a way of cleansing that part of. It's a little bit like having worked on an oily and greasy motor car and then not putting your best clothes on. You clean those hands until they are spotlessly clean, and then you go and put your best clothes on. It's a little bit like that. So if you think of it in those sort of ways. Ula says, are some aspects discredited if they are like Hitler, or are they cleansed before a recommunity test? Actually, you would be surprised at the level of evolution an aspect like Hitler had got, because the whole point of being that level of entity is that you're creating a focus for the world, a lot of entities, millions of entities, to work together against a common interest. And that common interest would have been Hitler, for instance, or Idi Amin, or Saddam Hussein, etc., etc., etc. These individuals are quite highly evolved individuals, and they're there to make us all work together while providing a common level of dissatisfaction that we all don't like, or a common interest. So that's another way of thinking of it. And Lily asks, how can one protect oneself from nasty, lower energetic beings or entities? Create a psychic shield around yourself. Very simple way of doing it. Without plugging my own psychic shield, that's pretty good. It does the job. I've not had anybody say that they've not been protected afterwards. Now, they've either too been embarrassed to say otherwise, or it's been very successful. A lot of things, it's been very successful. But anybody who has had problems have emailed me. I've given them information. They've gone away and sorted it out. So, creating a shield around ourselves, asking that shield to repel any energies that are detrimental to us, or any entities that are trying to take energy from us. That shield can be any way you do it. I mean, I've got one that's particularly robust because it includes the auric layers and the different auric layers, etc. But if you decide to weave an energy set around you, white light, and you say it is particularly source entity or God's energy or Christ's energy around you, and that energy will repel anything that is trying to take your energy, then that would work as well. It's your intention to not have your energy taken or not to be connected to which works, not the visualization. It's the pure intention. Okay, and Ula said, is Jesus or a white child a bigger chunk of sentient energy sent, as only a single aspect is sent by a test? Individuals such as Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, and the countless other individuals that were there, Arujun, Krishna, and the white children that are coming online now, they are aspects that are being chosen, usually hybrid aspects, or highly evolved aspects, that have been chosen to do a specific role for the benefit of the rest of us. So they are projected to be in service only, and not to do anything else other than be in service. And that's why they're here. And so they're not specifically a single aspect of Tess, of the true entity itself. They are a series of component parts, or a series of dissolved energies reintegrated together. But they still create a single aspect. So the answer is yes. They are still a singularized aspect whilst they're in the incarnate state from our perspective. But they can be more than that, of course, if they're disincarnate, because once we are in the energetic, we are able to do a lot more from an individualized and a collective perspective. Ula's saying, I am stuck with my perfectionist personality forever. Or am I stuck with my perfectionist personality forever? Or is this just a construct for this particular lifetime? Actually, it's not a construct for this lifetime at all. You can choose to change it. Perfection is something that we experience all the time, even when we think it's imperfect. So that's something to think about. Even when you make a mistake, that mistake is perfect. Even when you do something wrong, that doing the wrongness is perfect, provided that you are learning from that wrongness or that mistakeness. That's the most important thing to note, is that everything is useful. Everything gives us experience, everything gives us learning, everything gives us evolutionary content. So there is no such thing as being perfectionist or doing something wrong. Mine is just asked, is it self-judgment? Yes, it is. And the answer is learn from it, and it has a purpose. We can judge ourselves, but why should we judge ourselves? We should observe ourselves and analyse ourselves, but not be judgmental. Being judgmental leads us down a spiral of not being happy with who and what we are. And although we can use our self-analysis to improve our performance here, we should never think of ourselves as doing it wrong or doing it badly, because actually there's no such thing as wrong or badly. There's just it is just what we've done in the circumstance we've got. And you know, I've personally gone down this dark road myself when I've been analysing how I've behaved in my marriage to my wife before, just after she died, and even now I sometimes catch myself critiquing myself. But at the end of the day, everything we do is in a perfect state of perfection, because everything we've done, everything we've decided to do, everything we chose to do, was correct based upon our ability, experience, and tool set around us. So we have to be very careful when we start to judge ourselves. We should be forgiving when we analyse ourselves, not judge ourselves. We should be forgiving, and use that level of forgiveness to allow ourselves to make the right decision next time, so that we've truly learned from it. Okay, so mine is saying, right, judgment acquires karmic debt. It can do, if we use it in the wrong sense, because we can start to spiral downwards into a state of depression, for instance, if we continuously beat ourselves up for various different decision processes. We have to be aware that those decision processes were correct for us at that time. They may not have been optimal, specifically with hindsight, but at that point in time, they were the best we could have done. Because actually, we may have been under significant stress ourselves, for instance. And even when we're in that significant stress, it's difficult for us to be completely objective and provide a subjective response to that issue we've experienced. Okay. Right. Okay. So Ula's asking, what I'm asking is, next time I incarnate, will I have the same lower personality, or can we choose from all energies of the test? You can choose to have whatever personality you want. We can choose to be completely unable to understand everything and experience the ability to be, shall we say, thick, if we wish. I would say it's a particularly brave thing to do. But some aspects do come into existence being, what I would say, lacking in intelligence. So they can experience the lack of intelligence. So when we find people who have Asperger's, for instance, they have difficulty in understanding what you're saying and how to integrate with you, we shouldn't be derogatory of them or judge them. We should realise that actually this particular aspect or soul has decided, or its test has decided, to incarnate in a level of disability. This particular level of disability is a challenge in the physical. Okay, right. Okay, so let's have a quick look at some of these questions. I've got some questions from you. I think those questions I might pass on to next month if that's okay with you, because we're starting to run out of time very quickly. Okay, so where's right? Gwyneth came with her questions first. Actually, these questions line quite nicely with John Marshall's questions. Okay. And I'll just often drag this out and stick it as the Skype SMS. Okay. Oops, what happened there? There we go. Right. So, Gwyneth's first question is, I can appreciate that we're all self-healing entities that can walk out of our incarnations when the time is right, but we're not in this level of alignment right now with Source. And so, I think Gwyneth was talking about the use of chemicals there. That's later. So, self-healing entities. Let's look at this particular question. I can appreciate that we are all self-healing entities that can walk out of our incarnation when the time is right. But we're not at this level of alignment with Source now. And so what do we do, basically? Okay. So what do? We do the best we can. We think of ourselves as being healthy, fit, without this disease, without dysfunction, and that we are going to last a long time. And that's actually a very good way of doing this. And there's something I do all the time, although I do clearly get low energy like everybody else. I always think of myself as having enough energy to do what I'm doing. So even when I'm low in energy, I can still go out there and do my manual labour, for instance, or my physical labour, or my mental labour, or meet people I've committed to meet, heal people I've committed to heal, read for people I've committed to read for, or do workshops I've committed to do workshops for. And it's this level of realising that you can still do it that keeps you going. And so that actually creates the opportunity to heal ourselves, because we're no longer resigning ourselves to the physicality of what we are. We are ignoring it and moving on, giving ourselves healing along as we go, but more importantly, we're allowing ourselves to exist beyond the physical constraints that we give ourselves. Okay, I've answered that question. Second one is, I think, is basically a good one actually, and it's very close to what John Marshall was asking after the last Satsanga about the use of chemicals to reduce stress, anxiety, and pain in terminal illnesses. And I think the next couple of questions will help that at all. So Gwyneth has just said, clarification about the role of pharmacology in acute illnesses, chronic illnesses and terminal care. There are many instances where analgesia is required, both from a treatment point of view, example myocardial infarction or heart attack, where the adequate pain relief reduces anxiety and therefore the risk of further damage following accidents, for instance. Having worked in intensive care, which she worked in A&E, I can give many examples of this in terminal care where the pain can be so extreme as to close to torture. Please can I confirm the approach would be a combination of both spiritual, would be a combination of both spiritual practice and compassionate medical intervention. John asked a similar thing where he had somebody he knew who was terminally ill and had a level of medication to stop the anxiety and also stop the pain. And when he logged into them after the demise, he realised that the soul had gone pretty much straight away. And I was commenting last last Satsanga, that the use of such drugs as a cocktail together can slow the ability of the soul or the aspect from moving away from the physical form. Gwyneth actually asked me physically on Skype later, because we do talk to each other, by the way, because Gwyneth's helping me out, as to whether that was, an issue, whether it was, whether actually delaying the ability of the soul in its ability to remove itself from the connections of the physical form was an issue. Bearing in mind that that particular soul was being given an easier time whilst in the physical. And John said that his friend had a Buddhist friend who was praying for that person who was terminal. And one of the things I picked up was that as long as somebody is thinking or praying for them or meditating on them, then the detrimental effects of some of these energies associated with some of these drugs is actually negated. And I do know this is true because I experienced exactly the same thing with my wife Anne, because I was doing a lot of work with her before she actually departed the physical form, and she was heavily sedated and heavily was given a lot of painkillers basically. So she was getting a lot of stuff, and she actually was ejected from her body rather than was allowed to leave, and that was primarily because of the collective work that I had done and the Satsanga that was 2 or 3 days before her physical demise was doing to work on her. So that was really good. That allowed her to move onwards fast. So the answer is yes. If you've got somebody who is praying for them, meditating on them, helping them to go fast, wishing they would go, for instance, then that negates the ability of the drugs to slow down the departure of the aspect of the soul from the physical form. Yeah. Oh yes, John said there was a lot of people praying for her as well, like monks, etc. I think the number of individuals doesn't matter. It's the quality of the individuals that matters. So if you've got a lot of people who are praying or meditating for that individual who are, so to say, inexperienced, but then you've got one person who's very experienced, then that person can do the same job as like 20 or 30 people. So it's all about who's there and who's helping. Marnie's just said, so prayers, meditations of others act as a shepherd for foggy soul reintegration. They help the soul depart from the physical body. There can still be a little bit of fog afterwards, but it's all about getting the soul disassociated with the physical form. It's a bit like pulling out all the plugs from the sockets and the walls, and then carrying the computer into the back of your car, and then transporting it somewhere else. It's a little bit like that. Okay, right. So what else we got here? I think Marnie's doing some typing. Urs is saying, does it help if you have lots of incarnations before? I'm going to say yes and no. Does it help if you had lots of incarnations before? Yes and no. Because we can elect to incarnate in a complete state of ignorance. Or we can, i.e., not understanding anything to do with what we've done before and our level of evolution. We can, our true energetic self, or we can elect to incarnate in a complete state of ignorance. And therefore that state of ignorance would slow us down in terms of our departure. But those who have experienced lots of incarnations and are particularly well evolved wouldn't, being told, choose to do that because they've already done it, apparently. So I'm just being told now. They're saying that, yes, okay, you can do it, but why would you hang around here? You get out as fast as possible. Okay. Right, let's have a look at this other question. So that's a good question. Okay. Number 3. Okay. Another good question. Copy. Marnie's saying, yes, hanging around here is not what life feels like today. Correct. Okay, you're absolutely right there, Marnie. It just felt it's what it is today. Oops, I think this is the second one. This is the third one. I apologise for not sending it here. So the third question is, you said that personally you would go cold turkey with prescribed medication, but that you actually meant controlled and a safe regime of control. Yes, that's right. I think I said that in a rather black and white statement there. But actually, it's more of different shades of grey. When we're taking medication, is that right, Gwyneth? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's really.
Yeah. Okay. So, in effect, if we on medication of any sort, for instance, antidepressants or any form of steroids, for instance, they're helping us out with certain cancers, for instance, then we are ideally placed by slowly coming off the dependency of those drugs rather than going straight cold turkey. It's almost just as detrimental to go in straight cold turkey as it is to stay on the drugs, actually, because it's just as a shock to the physical form, both energetically and physically. So it's best to come off slowly, these things, reduce them over a period of a year sometimes, rather than over a period of a few days or a couple of weeks. So that sort of clears that up. Anything, if we've been experiencing long-term medication and there's no longer any need for that long-term medication, come off it slowly so the body gets used to that lack of medication slowly, because the physical form just get used to it, by the way, very quickly. Okay. So next question here is, again, right, some good questions here. Right, if the soul takes between 6 to 9 days to complete disengagement after the administration of opiates, etc., instead of 3 days, what is the problem with this? Well, we'll just explain that. Really, it's to do with the well, I'll finish the question off. Why would this be of concern when we consider what the times of need actually exist? Time doesn't exist, but it's the association with the physical. That's the issue. And so, if we do have individuals praying for us, working for us, meditating on us, wishing us, giving us energy to depart from the physical form, then it gets us out within the 3 days, which is the ideal, the optimal. The longer we stay within the physical, past the demise of the physical form, the more difficult it is to start to realise what we are. We enter into this, as John called it, a limbo state where we start to believe that we are still a human form and we create a human environment around ourselves. Or worst case, we go into a state of nothingness for a bit, where it's such a shock that it's almost like an energetic coma. We're not actually, as an aspect, communicating with our Trinity self or any other aspect that is there to help us from other Trinity selves to come back into the energetic. We are in total denial of what we are, and we go tilt, basically. We don't come out to the side, and then it takes a lot of work by our guide and helpers, and sometimes entities that are specialised or aspects that are specialised in pulling us out of this particular state of limbo to pull us back again. So depending upon how we work with it, depends upon how we manage to get away from this state of limbo or being stuck as a result of not allowing ourselves to be or not having the help to move us away from our physicality when we can. Marley's saying, from a physical science perspective, the body becomes toxic and non-functional, embarks on a decomposition stage. Being trapped in that physically might be horrifying. Yeah, oh, thanks, Gwyneth. Yeah. Of being told to give you a description of what it feels like, it's a little bit like, and I'm losing the words now, so I've got to be quick. when we wake up sometimes in the morning and we can't move our bodies. I've forgotten the word for it now. But it's a bit like that. We are totally aware, totally awake. We know where we are. We can't see. We can't feel. Paralyzed. Yeah, paralyzed is one way of saying it. There's another word for it as well. There's a specific word for it. I can't or a description for it. But basically, we're totally awake in the morning, but we can't move anything. We can't open our eyes. We can't open our mouth. We can't speak. We can't move our limbs. We are totally paralyzed. Not night paralysis. Yeah, that's the same sort of thing. Yeah. Sleep paralysis. That's the word that I was looking for. Sleep paralysis. That's the thing. And it's a little bit like that. So we can't communicate with other entities. We can't communicate with other entities. We can't experience our guide and helpers communicating with us. Okay, that's the problem with that. Okay, next question. Okay, last one. Last one. Good. I might get a chance to very quickly go through others from the cheeky. Right, so question from... got it, yeah. How can pharmaceutically produced products be compared with sacred plants and herbs vibrationally? Surely the vibration of a non-organic and chemically produced vaccine, for example, must be out of alignment with our beings, or our beingness, as compared to a herb or plant that is natural product, as manifested here as such as a natural product, but can be completely different, but can be a completely different entity when viewed from a different vibrational level. The very function of synthesis changes its energetic signature, is what I've just been told. And so, if we were using natural herbs, sacred plants, we want to call them that, the ancient medicines is what I would classify them as being, then that's a different kettle of fish. That's a different way of doing it. That's a more natural way of doing it because we're using natural energies to do it. Those natural energies being given to us in the shape of certain plants and shrubs and trees, for instance. The pharmaceutically produced products introduce a different state of energy. Although they can be synthesized from the natural product, there's the state of materialistic content associated with them, of greed, of addiction, of gaining money from us. It's all those sorts of things that are interwoven with the synthesis, along with chemicals that wouldn't specifically be aligned to those natural medicines if they were used in the natural state. And so some of those chemicals create a cocktail which dilutes the effectivity of those natural medicines through the use of making teas out of certain plants, for instance. So it's very much a case of pharmaceutically produced products are not only a distillate, there's no distillate, a dissolved state of being of the original medicine, but also they have the underlying energy associated with the company that produces them. And so we absorb that as well. So really we should be having more natural products. All of these things from big pharmaceutical companies are not good for us. We should be using the more natural drugs. Okay. Right, I'm going to see. I think we've got a little bit of time. So I think the meditation is going to be quite short, actually, from what I'm going to do, because it's going to be more of shall I say, a piece of guidance rather than actual meditation. Oh, Marnie's just come up with another quick one. Pharmacology and any synthetic chemical is a monoculture of chemistry, where natural occurring ones in plants and terpenoids and phenolics are combined naturally, occurring in various concentrations. These are functions more slowly resonate with our systems. That's correct, yeah. So in effect, the act of synthesis removes a lot of the good stuff. It's a little bit like cooking your food too much, cooking your vegetables too much. They all taste the same. Whereas if you just cook them enough, you'd still maintain the essence of the carrot, or the essence of the broccoli, or the essence of the cauliflower. If you cook them too much, you would you lose that essence of cauliflowerness, of carrotness, of the essence of what that particular vegetable is. Okay, right. So let's have a quick look at something very quickly. Dig into others' questions. I think she's only got 2 here. Right. These are different set of questions compared to what we've just been doing, by the way. Oops. There we go. Right. First question. When our true energetic self uses the Akashic event space to plan and choose an incarnation, how do we choose a particular body for the record? Body from the records. For instance, who made the body in the first place? E.g., Guy's body, who lived in that lifetime being shown in the records. Do we replace someone else's life by soul in the same form, i.e., body of Guy, with our soul aspect or for a variation, or do we relive our own life over and over again, like the movie Groundhog Day? Does the Akashic events? Okay, that's one question. We choose the body based upon how long we need to be here and what we need to do with it, and the level of, shall I say, opportunity that being in a certain family gives us. Because it's the family that gives us the springboard. There's no point in us starting 100 metres dash, 300 metres off the back, if we need to get to the finishing line first. We have to be able to get to the finishing line first. So we choose the best location, the best family, the best body, the best opportunity to do that. And so we have to be very careful what we do. It's no point in choosing a very athletic body if it's going to die at the age of 25, and we need it to live to 85. So we look at all sorts of different things: the location, the education, the family, the level of protection it's going to give us, the level of education it's going to give us, the level of number of individuals or friends we're going to meet, that we're supposed to meet. All these different things are weighed up. It's a very difficult process, and there are a number of different vehicles or bodies that are chosen, and they're all put into the Akashic records. And the Akashic records, of course, is a piece of memory that's associated with the source, that's purely associated with human incarnation. There's other different Akashic records, but they're called different things, other incarnate vehicles. But there's lots of different what-if scenarios that can be run through the Akashic that would allow us to experience similar lives but not be optimal. So we have to go through these what-if scenarios to make sure we get the right body. And sometimes it takes hundreds of what-if scenarios to get the right body. Okay. Right. Mo's asked a question. I'm going to come back to that right at the very end. Others said, but whose body is it in the Akashic that we choose from and look at? We have many bodies we choose from. We have our guides and helpers assisting us and saying, well, if you want, it's a bit like buying a house or a car. If you want to do certain things with a car, like you want to go off-road with it, because you need to go and to work on a farm, and the farm doesn't have sealed roads, and you want to have a 4x4. It's important as having a saloon car. The saloon car wouldn't last very long. So there are various different makes of off-road vehicles that you can choose from. And that's the same with bodies. It's the same with locations. It's the same with abilities of that body, physical abilities. It's the same with susceptibility to disease. We choose. Oh, it's generally okay. So we can choose all sorts of different bodies based upon what's out there. We do different what if scenarios based upon that. Okay. Going back to the vaccines again, Jeremy says vaccines do not work. There is no evidence of their effectiveness, and they contain toxic products like aluminium and thimerosal, which is methyl mercury, linked to autism and Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative diseases. Yes, that is a correct statement, although there are a number of different suggestions that suggest that certain vaccines do work. But the number of after effects, if we look at all sorts of different treatments we have from a synthesized basis and look at the number of after effects that we could have, the number of after effects actually are more detrimental than the actual cure to the problem. So the vaccines don't work, correct. We need to get more natural methodologies, energetic and physioenergetic vaccines based upon natural chemicals, such as through the use of plants and trees and grasses and herbs. Yeah. Okay, then let's have a look at this last question here, last part of this question from Ula. Does the Akashic event space store the record of all 3 evolution cycles? Right, I mentioned about 3 evolutionary cycles before. This is to do with how our source sense is working with and moving around the energies it is allowed to move within the origin. It said, does the Akashic event space store all records of all 3 evolutionary cycles, so they're all available for us to choose from in the 3rd cycle? Or are the lines of the multiverse cycle 1 and 2 kept elsewhere? This is point in this comment is point 4 from the origin. Not accessible. Are they not accessible to us in this cycle? The Akashic records are only relevant to human incarnation, not other opportunities for incarnation, either now or in previous. So the memory, if you want to call it that, the overall memory, is available to us in the energetic. The Akashic is available to us from the perspective of incarnation in the human body only. Okay, that's about the size of that. There is a memory set, which is a fundamental part of the origin, and therefore a fundamental part of the source entity. But it is a global memory set, which includes everything. There are various other subsets of that are specific to certain types of experience, which includes incarnation in various different vehicles. One of them is the Akashic, which records only incarnation in the human vehicle. Okay, and I think there's one more question from over here. Yeah, if I can get there. Okay, copy. Right. So, yes, Gwyneth just said I couldn't agree more about vaccines. Yeah, vaccines. We don't need vaccines. Vaccines are a sticking plaster. At the end of the day, they don't actually work. We need to deal with ourselves at the root cause, which is usually energetic. Right, and if we can use the plants and herbs, which are generally unspoiled energetics from a physical perspective, then we'll be able to deal with them not as a sticking plaster, but as a downstream, upstream function of healing. Okay. So the next question is: does the test or does the Trinity itself have 12 archetypal aspects or soul personalities that it keeps and uses over and over again to incarnate in different places? Or do they correspond to any system we use, like the astrological signs? The astrological signs I have no association with at all. I've never ever been able to reconcile the use of the astrological signs with what we are. I know that there has been a number of different individuals who can say, oh, you're a Taurus, which is what I am, therefore you're bullheaded, yeah, and dedicated, yes, and consistent sometimes, and that's it, and other things like you're an Aries or you're Libra and all that sort of thing. They have different personality traits. there is minor affection to the physicality as a result of being born as a physical being within a certain period of movement within the galaxy, within the universe. But the personalities of the aspects or shards within the true entity itself don't have any, aren't affected in any way by these things, except for, as I've just stated, certain aspects gain certain levels of experience, evolutionary content, and that gives them a certain signature or a certain personality. And if they are particularly good at certain things, then they are allowed to maintain that personality. So they're allowed to stay in partial communion. Or sometimes they're allowed to stay in a projected state. If they particularly have a suite of incarnations or a suite of experiences to experience. And so there is, looking at what I'm just seeing here in my mind's eye, there is a very limited number of true energetic souls who you could arguably have got 12 personalities within and without them. Because in general, there's a mixture of projected aspects that are in partial communion, and aspects that have entered into full communion. So to have 12 aspects that are projected, that have individualization, it is available, but it's rare. Okay, and it's rare to have a true energetic self that's got all of its aspects individualized in partial communion, or in full communion. It's just the permutations are so diverse. It's rare. They happen, but it's not common. Okay. So Phil says, so we don't get imprinted by neutrinos at birth. No. Our personality is based upon our collective evolutionary experience, our collective experiential experience, and what we bring into as an aspect of our Trinity itself to work with our particular incarnate experience. Nothing to do with the horoscope, sadly. It's going to trash a complete industry there. Sorry, guys. Okay. Neutrinos are physical, of course. Physicality doesn't affect what we are. We're not physical. We're energetic. Simple as that. That hopefully answers that question. Marnie says the Mayans had yes. Oh yeah. Before we go on, yes. John says aren't planets entities as well? Yes, they are entities, and some of those are entities or aspects from true energetic selves who are experiencing the early stages of individuality and sentience. That's what they do. Okay. They were saying to the effects of birth on Earth. I'm going to get back to the Mayan bit in a moment. This is the neutrinos or everything else. What affects us at birth, from a physical perspective, is our parents and our peer group. Our personality is created from those around us. We're programmed from the physical perspective, but the underlying personality of what we are is always there. So even though we don't get programmed by what we experience as a baby, and the way our parents look after us, and the way our siblings communicate with us, and the way our friends look after us, that by and large, programs us. But underneath all of that is a primary personality, which is based upon what we are energetically. Okay, getting back to Marnie's. The Mayans had 20 archetypes, and associated with it the in and out breath of the universe from the point of view of the sun. The in and out breath of the universe, actually, my understanding is a localized description of what happens from an event, from a source entity perspective, when the source entity moves in, basically occupies and assigns its sentience to an area of energy within the origin. It creates an environment for evolutionary purposes and populates that with smaller versions itself, so that it can experience that area of the origin in the minutest detail it can, and in as fast a way as it can. And then it contracts, it withdraws all those entities when withdraws them or recommunes them when they've done the job, reassigns energies to itself, disattaches or detaches the sentience from the energies and moves across to another patch of energies, occupies it, and then creates another environment. So the expansion into a series of energies, the creation of an environment, and the population of that environment with entities, you could argue, is the breathing out. The breathing in is when those entities go back into communion, and the energies associated with the environment are reused, regathered, and the sentience associated with that source entity moves its location and reassigns or commandeers another set of energies, and then that's the breathing out. Okay. There's a lot of that in the Origin Speaks, by the way. Okay, so Gwyneth says, so the micro, so the macro. Yes, of course, yes, same. Good. Yeah. The black hole, the description of the black hole clearly comes from, shall I say, I'm going to use the word racial memory, from energetic memory of what we've experienced before. Yes. Yes, it does. I say when the Origin Speaks comes out, right at the very end, it all comes into full technicolor for me, because that's what I experienced. The understanding of how a source entity is progressing through the energies of the origin, versus how the Hindus described it as the breathing in and the breathing out of the universe. They actually meant multiverse, but we couldn't have understood what a multiverse was then. Okay, and I think mine is typing feverishly here before I go into meditation, because I think you need to go into meditation now. Okay. Oh, thanks. Okay. Okay, so are there any other questions on this? I don't think there is. Thank you for your questions. Thanks, Gwyneth, for your questions. Thanks, John, for also asking the same questions directly to me. And thank you, other as well. And thank Marnie. And thank Jeremy. And all the others, and Lily as well. Seeing here. Yep. Good. Let's just coach you all. Fantastic. Okay. What I want to do now is go into a very simple. It's not actually a meditation as such, more of guidance for self-healing. And there's a part 2 to this as well, which I'm going to do next Satsanga. But I actually feel that this is probably more beneficial to us all, personally, and if we're helping others to heal as well, from a fundamental perspective rather than a holistic perspective. So if you get yourself settled down in a meditative condition with your eyes closed and your feet on the ground and your back straight, in right angle position in your chair, and your closed eye vision focused upon the origin of the third eye, or the spiritual eye, which is in between the 2 eyebrows and above the bridge of the nose, and your hands are palm uppermost in your thighs. Okay. I'd like you to just think of yourself as being in a white room at the moment. Okay, in a white room. A totally bare white room. This is designed to cleanse our minds, just to quieten us down. Okay. I want you to just visualize or use your mentally spoken words to achieve the same thing, that you can see a door on one of the walls of this white room. And you walk towards this door, and you open it, and you walk through the door and you find yourself in a white corridor. And so you walk up this white corridor, it's got no doors initially, and right at the very end of this white corridor there's another door on the right hand side, or on the right hand wall. So you walk up towards this right hand wall, you open the door, and inside there is a computer terminal. Okay? So I want you to close the door, walk towards this computer terminal, sit down at the chair. And I want you to recognise that this computer terminal is a computer program that is designed to work with your psycho-spiritual programming, how your physical body is affected by thought processes or dysfunctional energies, or mistakes in the genome or the DNA profiles based upon the poor recognition of RNA communication from the energetic point of view. RNA, of course, is a physical communicator from DNA to cell protein, but energetically it also programs the DNA. We're starting to realise that RNA has other physical functions as well, and can also program DNA, but that's high-level science. But this computer program is a terminal that allows us to change our program settings. Okay? So if you think of this computer terminal as being your personal health or thought processes, or if you're healing somebody else, then it can be somebody else's programs that control health or thought processes. And you can see that from this, if you go into the settings part of that particular program, then you can change the way that we operate, the way that we respond to certain things. So I'm going to use a few examples for you. I mean, there is no limitations on this, by the way. You can add any setting within this computer program that you wish. If you're healing people, you can change the programs every day, every hour, to that which is required to be changed to affect a healing process with the patient or yourself. Okay? So let's just sit down by this computer, if you haven't already done so, and just grab the mouse and shake it from side to side to get the screen up and running. Okay. I'm going to give you a couple of archetypical things that I experience with people, and a number of archetypical responses to it. And you can use these as an idea, as an example for doing your own healing, or healing on others. Okay. Let's just say that we wake up in the morning anxious. So if we go into the diagnostic routine, the settings of the computer, and we do an alphabetical search, we find anxious there, or angst. So we click on that. And we can turn angst or anxiety off. So we click on the off rather than the on. We click on the off button rather than the on button. In doing so, we're turning off anxiety or angst. But we can't just do that. We also need to apply it to all of the 7 templates associated with the gross physical and spiritual physical aspects of the human form. And so, if you imagine this screen, where on the left hand side you've got these diagnostics and you've got anxiety there, and you click the on or off button, and to the right hand side you see all these different levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you have to tick all those boxes to so that that command has changed from being anxiety on to anxiety off, and you're ticking all the boxes to say anxiety is off on template 1, template 2, template 3, etc., etc., etc. Or you can elect to use a check all or select all tag and click on that, and all those other aspects are clicked for us rather than having to click just the one. And then the bottom right hand side of the display, there's the save button. Then you save it. So what you've done here is you've looked at the major cause, which is anxiety. You've looked at the templates affected, 1 to 7. You've selected them all, and then you've clicked on the save button. So your change of status for all those 7 levels references being anxious have changed from being anxiety on to anxiety off. And therefore the anxiety goes away. And it works remarkably well. So that's one example. Let's think of another one. Let's think of headaches, for instance. Again, we can think of headaches there, and we can use the click on the button that says headaches off.
Can we do back pain? Spasm?
We can do back pain, we can do spasm, we can do anything.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you want to advance, while we're doing this, okay, let me just finish the headache, and then we'll do back space and back. We'll actually do back pain and back spasm for you. Okay. So then we click on the select all for the different levels, the different layers, different templates, and then we click on the save button, and we've stopped it. But sometimes we have to be careful because although we can click on anxiety as a general function, we have to see what makes us anxious and click on the function of what makes us anxious. What makes us anxious? Going for job interviews. So anxiety job interviews, off. Select all, that's all the different templates, save. Okay, so we have to be, what other things cause us anxiety? Going to the dentist. Sorry, Jeremy. So we say, going to the dentist causes me anxiety, off. Select all those different 7 levels, and then save. And then the anxiety about going to the dentist is stopped. In my youth, I had anxiety about going to my haircut. And now I know why. So I could have gone, anxiety about going to the barbers. Turn it off, select all, and then turn it off. And so therefore we've been able to create an opportunity where we can turn off certain spiritual-physical functions that affect us physically. And so from that perspective we can change psycho-spiritual functions quite easily. We can also change physical functions directly. Sometimes we don't know what's causing the backache, for instance. Sometimes backache is caused, or knee ache, or any form of lower body ache, is caused by us not sticking up for ourselves, not standing up for ourselves, not standing up straight for ourselves, defending ourselves properly. And so, in terms of backache, or back spasm, we can tick the box that says back spasm off. Select all the different templates by doing select all, clicking on select all, and then saving it. And therefore our backache gets turned off. If we find out that our backache is caused by let's say the trauma caused by an accident a number of years ago, then we can say the trauma caused by the accident, physical trauma, is turned off, and we save that on all 7 levels, seven spiritual and physical levels, gross physical and spiritual and physical levels, and then we save it. and then the association with physical pain is gone. And then we also save, or should we say turn off, the pain associated with the psychological aspect of being injured. And we can disassociate the psychological connectivity between the injury and the reoccurring back pain or back spasm. And so we find that within our computer program and we turn it off. And again we select all those levels and then we press the save button. If for instance we have somebody with cancer, we can zoom into that cancer and look at it at the DNA level and turn off the proliferation of DNA of cells at the DNA level for that cancer by turning them off. So for instance, if we have pancreatic cancer, we can go to all the cells that have got pancreatic cancer, look at the command pancreatic cancer on or off, select off, select all those 7 templates associated with the gross physical and spiritual physical aspect of what we are, and then press the save button. And therefore, the DNA is reprogrammed. And pancreatic cancer disappears. If there's a energetic dysfunction within us that's causing the physical manifestation of pancreatic cancer, we can find out what that is by asking what is the spiritual physical thought process associated with it. Okay? And it could be a sexuality issue. So we say, okay, sexuality problem that's giving us pancreatic cancer. Let's turn off that association. So you select the command, association with pancreatic cancer and the sexuality issue. You turn it off. And you save it after you've selected all the different gross physical and spiritual physical templates. And you save it. And then that particular energy associated with that is turned off. And you can continue to do this. Okay? So back spasms, for instance. Go to back spasms. Potential for back spasms. Tick the box that says off. Tick the box that says all of our gross physical and spiritual physical templates, and then click on the save button. And we've turned off the opportunity to get back spasms based upon that condition. If there's a certain condition where I get back spasms because of meeting certain people, then the link is that person to the back spasm. Then we say, okay, that person creates back spasms. I want to turn that link off. So you imagine the link having an on or an off button, and you click on the off button, and you select all those energy templates, 3 gross physical and 4 spiritual physical, and then you click the save button, and then the association with that person and the back spasm disappears. So that's how you can heal yourself in a very quick way, by visualizing or using your mentally spoken words to turn certain spiritual physical switches on or off. You can turn on a resistance to lung cancer through inhaling secondhand smoke, for instance. So you go into your lungs and you say, okay, lungs, cancer. So you click on lungs, then the next subdirectory, cancers. Click on next subdirectory, cancers created by passive smoking. Click the off button, select all for all the energy templates, and then click on the save button. And that particular form of cancer you won't get. Okay? It's very simple. That's one way of healing yourself based upon understanding and knowing your spiritual and physical buttons. Okay? So the movement from the white room and the corridor and the movement back into another room is just giving you a focus from moving out of yourself into a location where you can reprogram yourself. If you wanted to, you can come out of that room, open the door, turn left and walk back down to the first room to bring yourself back into your physical aspect now. Okay, so let's do that. Having given you a number of examples, the recording will be here of course, and I'll make sure it's available to you fairly quickly after this Satsanga. So you can go towards the last 15 minutes or so to refresh your memories, and you can affect your own healing here. There is nothing that can't be healed by pure desire and intention. And so we walk out of this room that's programming ourselves, open the door, close the door behind us, and turn to the left and walk down this corridor to the other room that's got a single door at the very end of the corridor. And we open that door, we move into the room, this white room, which is the interface between us moving out of our gross physical environment and into our energetic environment. So we're now in that white room. We can now think of ourselves as being back in the room where we are now, where our computer is, where we're participating in this Satsanga. Okay, and so slowly open your eyes, and if you've got some water, drink a bit of water to ground you. And if you've got any juice, that'll do just as well. Okay, and hopefully you can use that little bit of programming, and you can create any program you want to heal yourself and others in any way, and it works, providing you've got total knowledge or a total recognition that it does work. Any element of doubt, and it sort of causes a little bit of a problem. Okay, because the doubt negates it. But if you have no doubt, and I go into this with no doubt, then it works. Okay. So try it on yourselves and try it on your friends and family. Okay, everybody. Thank you very much. It's been wonderful to be here with you all. I know it's Valentine's Day. For some of us, it's the next day, or close on the next day. And some of you, it's just starting out, so have a good time with your loved ones.
Did you see the aliens in Crete?